Welcome back to another Palm Wine Central podcast episode. I am one of your hosts, Uncle AK. With me, I got my other host, T. Terez. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I am good. I can't complain, man. It's been a great day. This episode is definitely one for the making. I'm very interested in this one. It's a very great topic. I don't know about you, but a lot of people can relate to this one. Especially if you. Anyways, let me not start. We're just starting. Let's start like this, right? Have you ever felt like you don't belong in your role? Like someone might tap you, on your shoulder and say, "Oh, we made a mistake hiring you." If you've experienced this nagging feeling of self-doubt, you're not alone. You're definitely not an imposter. Today, we have a remarkable guest joining us to unpack this topic, imposter syndrome. That's the topic, and share her groundbreaking strategies of triumphing over imposter syndrome. Please welcome Dr. Michele Yonga, DNP, powerhouse clinician, author, and advocate for mental health and personal growth. Her book, Triumphing Over Imposter Syndrome, 8 Practical Strategies to Uncover and Shine Through Imposter Faces in Your Professional Life, offers hope to anyone struggling to silence their inner critics and step boldly into their potential. Dr. Young isn't just sharing theories, she's lived it. She's bringing her personal journey of overcoming imposter syndrome to our conversation, making her insights relatable, practical, and truly inspiring. So grab your cup, palm wine, scotch, man, whichever you're drinking, water, or tea, coffee, whatever fuels your soul, and let's begin. Please again, help me welcome Dr. Michele Vera to Palm Wine Central podcast.
Yay. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm first of all just going to give a disclaimer. All the views I'm going to express today during this interview or during this podcast session are solely mine. They're my personal views, and they're not necessarily the views of any entity I work for, nor are they the views of any U.S. government department views. So thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Yes.
Welcome.
Before we get started, can you please let people know a little bit about you? Who is Dr. Michele?
So I am a nurse practitioner by profession. I am a doctoral prepared nurse practitioner, and I'm certified as a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner as well as a family nurse practitioner. I've been in the profession or in healthcare for over a decade, so a decade and moving on. And currently, it is my everyday's job to work with individuals suffering with mental health conditions. And it is my dream to help people who are suffering with self-doubt to overcome it and to become a better version of themselves and to live to their full potential. So that's about me. Thank you.
So how much sense do you have? Because hey.
I was like, she was listening. I was like, wow, that's an educated woman right there. If I ever seen one.
What is DNP? I don't know if you said it. What's DNP?
So it's a Doctor of Nursing Practice degree. And that's why I said I'm a doctoral prepared nurse practitioner.
What does that even mean? Please, for someone to understand.
Yeah. So then when you do nursing, you get a bachelor's and you can get board certified to practice as a registered nurse. After that, you can obtain your master's degree and decide to specialize in any specialty and become a nurse practitioner or a nurse specialist or even a registered nurse anesthetist. So a certified registered nurse anesthetist. After obtaining your master's degree, you can further your study to get a terminal degree in nursing, which is the Doctor of Nursing Practice. And to obtain that, you have to complete like a project where you implement You do a project in a facility or a clinic to improve health outcomes in that clinic, and eventually become a doctor, prepared nurse practitioner.
Okay, now. I'm not even gonna act like I followed every single thing you said, but I'm definitely going to edit this episode. I could slow it down and really understand what you said. Because all I can really think about is book, 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 and I'm like, count me out, count me out. So later down the episode, I have a follow-up question for that. So, but let's just get into our episode if I get carried away. T, are you ready for the icebreaker? Dr. Michele, are you ready for the icebreaker?
Yes, I am.
I've been in the business 24 years, right? And I've seen people go from nothing to the biggest stars in the world. I've seen people go from one role to winning Academy Awards and doing all that. And what I realized yesterday thinking about it, we're lying to our kids, dog. And I think that's a big problem in our community. We tell our kids that and this is fresh on my heart. Like, I literally just came to this conclusion last night. We tell our kids if they do right and they make the good grades and they go to the programs and they will become successful. If you work hard enough, your work will be paid off. And that's not true. Success is given. It's not earned. Because you can be the most brilliant. If one person don't tap you, each one of y'all. There were people who could hit harder, who could catch better, who could run faster. But somebody said, you're the one. And the other 50 behind you fell off. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And because of that, I don't know what that emotion or that feeling is the scary thing. Because I went to all the programs. I've done Broadway. I've done off-Broadway. I've been in the business 24 years. I've been in 2 Academy Award films. I've done independent films. I've done major motion pictures. Now I'm Captain America. So now what?
I guess, Doc, what do you think?
So I think it's all about perspective, right? On one hand, it's true that exposure or who you find in your path might help you gravitate or get towards your dream or attain these big goals you were aiming for. So on one hand, that is true. However, if you do not put in the work when given the opportunity, then it's going to be nothing. You don't earn it. You don't get to that goal. You don't achieve the goal you set yourself to get. So I see where he's coming from, but I don't totally agree with his perspective. So you kind of have to look at both sides and put it into perspective, and the context matters as well. But I see where he's coming from. I see where, it's obvious that sometimes you need to be exposed. But then it could be you who puts yourself there, right? It could be you who expose. You have to expose yourself. If not, you don't get it. And on another hand, you could be found. Your talent can be sought out. You could be the only pearl in the sand, and someone finds you. So that's true too. But it could go either way.
Yeah, I agree with Doc. I think, to me, I would tweak the wording of what he said and say that success is not by hard work only. Because like he said, it doesn't matter how much you work, right? If that opportunity is not given to you, you're not going to get it. And then where your hard work comes into play is now you got to maintain this place that you've been put in, right? Otherwise, you're going to fall out eventually. But it does not take away the importance of preparation for the thing that you're being exposed to. So I think I would say yes. I have been told multiple times growing up that just all you need is to work hard, just do the right things. That's not true. That did not work out for me at all. And that set me up for failure, because you start working hard and doing all the right things, still things do not fall in line for you. because you do all that. So I agree with what he says. I think we should add the word, take away the word, all you have to do is work hard. Hard work pays. It does pay, but I feel like it's an aftermath to exposure, if that makes sense.
Nice, nice. I mean, hearing that, I'll ask him, in what field are you talking about? Because it can't be general, right? Are you talking about entertainment? Okay, sure. Are you talking about sports? Sure. But let's go to general things like, health, becoming a doctor, IT professionals, things like that. You got to put in the work. You got to put in the time, right? Clinicals. There's a reason why clinicals exist, right? You need to put in that time, right? So I guess in that sense, you really need to step it up, right? And say, what do I want from here? And go for it versus, hey, okay, I'm going to go for it and then expect somebody now to then see my talent and then pick me, So depending on what field you are, that might apply to you or it might not. So I don't know, but yeah.
I think it goes for all fields, unless you're trying to go into OnlyFans. Even OnlyFans does need that exposure, right? You can have all these goods. That's why they do advertising, right? You still need, I don't think there's anything that you do on earth that exposure does not significantly improve your success rate. I think that goes for everything. You just need the right person to give you the right recommendation. You just need to meet that one person who just likes the way you look. And it goes the other way too, right? You just go somewhere, someone just doesn't like the way you look, and that's it for you. It's a wrap. They're not looking at your resume that is 3 miles long. They're not so I think it applies to all fields. That's just
Nice. Okay. Take us to the next one now. The woman highlight of the week. What you got for us today, T?
okay. So this is actually one of my favorite historical figures. And I learned about her a couple of years ago. So today we are highlighting Sarah Breedlove, better known as Madam C.J. Walker, born in 1867 to formerly enslaved parents in Louisiana, and she died in 1919. Madam C.J. Walker was an African-American entrepreneur, philanthropist, activist, and she is widely recognized as the first female self-made millionaire in the U.S. She started working as a washerwoman and then developed a line of hair care products for African-American women, inspired by a quest to cure her own scalp disorder and facing a lack of products designed for Black hair in the marketplace. And so she built a business, Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company, and grew it into a highly successful brand, employing thousands of women and setting the stage for the Black hair industry to thrive. Beyond business, Madam C.J. Walker was a dedicated advocate for racial and gender equality. She donated to educational courses, the NAACP, and the Black YMCA. She used her wealth as well to support Black communities and to uplift women through economic empowerment. Madam C.J. Walker's legacy continues to inspire entrepreneurs, women in leadership, and social activists even today. And there's a movie about her life on Netflix. So you want to see how she built her business from the ground up. That movie is a good depiction of her life story.
Nice. Well, thank you, T.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Madam C.J. Walker. Wait, that's what it's called on Netflix? Cool. I gotta check it out. can't wait for the one that comes on Hulu. The lady's a president. What's her name? Viola Violet.
Viola Davis.
Viola Davis.
Yeah, she's a president. Yeah, I can't wait for that.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyways, let's get back to business. Dr. Yonga, let's take our attention to your book, while we're really here. Imposter syndrome. Talk to us about that. Why did you pick imposter syndrome out of everything first, to write about? How did you come up with the title? And how long did it take you to write it? And really, what really inspired you, right, to give us 52 pages of imposter syndrome?
So I was really inspired by my personal journey with imposter syndrome. And it took me about a year, actually more than a year, to go through the process of telling myself I had to do this, because imposter syndrome in itself was holding me back, even when I realized this is a topic that needs to be spoken about. So personally, I think it took me a while to realize that what I was experiencing was imposter syndrome, or that it did have a name to it. Coming from Cameroon and moving to the United States, the cultural differences, the pressure to want to belong, to kind of fit into this new society, kind of, took its toll on me in very subtle ways. Always wanting to prove myself, or always wanting to kind of belong to this new society and wanting to excel, because that's what I did when I was in Cameroon, excel in, environments where I found myself. So I had the strong desire to keep up with this as I moved to this new terrain that I had to explore. But then I quickly found out that, I was part of this underrepresented, population at this time, being in this new environment. So despite all this, I think I still, kept up with my education, eventually got into the professional world. But then it really hit me when I, got into, say, my dream job, where I was working in, a cutting edge research facility. And from the time when I got, called in for an interview up until when I started working there, it just felt surreal. Like, I couldn't believe that it was this girl coming from Cameroon, moving to America, who is about to get into this, space, which I never could have imagined I could get into. And that's when I think, the self-doubt started creeping in and just almost paralyzing me. But because of the support system I had, I was able to still make it through and get into that space. But I tell you, every day I will go into work, I will look at my environment and ask myself, wow, am I really here amongst all these people who are so knowledgeable, who are so intelligent, or who are so intellectual? And, these feelings kept creeping in and coming at me every day. And every time I'll just be, fearing that someone would come one day and tell me, hey, you don't belong here, get out. Like, what are you doing here? This place is not for you. So after struggling with that for about a year, I'm like, yeah, I got to do something about these feelings, because if I let this be me every day, I probably will actually lose this space. I probably will not, be able to maintain my position here or keep up. So then I decided to dig in and learn more about what I was feeling. And granted, back in grad school, I had heard the word imposter syndrome. Even though I was experiencing it in subtle forms during that period, I didn't fully relate to it until I was in this space. And then I did my research and try to figure out what I could do, to just evolve or get out of this constant self-doubt space in my mind. And that's how I decided to, explore more about imposter syndrome, learn it for myself to help myself. And when I did and started feeling better and have worked in this space for going on 5 years and counting, then I was like, knowing that other people are experiencing these same feelings. And a lot of times we don't talk about it enough, even in the professional field or professional world. We don't talk about it enough in our cultural setting as Africans. I felt the need to really talk about it, to have it, to share what I had experienced and what I learned to do to help me overcome or to do better despite the self-doubt. Then I embarked on trying to write it. I had sat on the idea for a long time, honestly, and I had started putting little pieces of the book together. But then, like, middle of last year is when I was like, I just had this strong urge to get this book out. And then I reached out to an editor who really helped me to hone in my storytelling. Because if I'm being honest, I don't know if I've ever been a good storyteller. So I needed somebody to help me make it more of a story so that others can relate better. And that's how I got into, just smoothing it out. And by December of last year, I was able to publish it with the help of African Pictures International and my editor being Sandra Fondufe Okewo, who was exceptional to help me bring this book to life.
Yeah. There's something that you mentioned about not knowing that you were having imposter syndrome because it was very subtle. And then you mentioned that in the book as well, where you say imposter syndrome is not a one size fit all, and that each one has its own unique set of challenges and characteristics. And could you just explain to us briefly all the different phases of imposter syndrome and how we can recognize these patterns?
Right. All right. Thanks for that question, Terez. So yes, and I think I didn't address how I came up with the, part of the title where we're identifying it as faces, imposter faces. So yes, it's not a one size fit all kind of a thing. These are just a group of symptoms that people may experience differently. And so it kind of, when you're thinking about feeling self-doubt, sometimes it's like it's a voice that's speaking to you, telling you you're not good enough. You don't belong in a space where there's evidence upon evidence that shows that you've put in the work to actually be there, So it could come in as a voice that's speaking to you. And sometimes it's like you actually see a face of somebody standing in front of you and telling you, putting you down, working on your self-esteem, getting you feeling, not worthy of what you have, of what you've accomplished, of what you've earned. And that's how, as I expressed this to my editor, she was like, there you go. I think that would be a good phrase, to use to identify the different types of imposter syndrome. So the use of that, phrase, imposter faces, was to capture the different types and how imposter syndrome can manifest in somebody or in people. So if for somebody who, they focus a lot on achieving perfection, right? They set these high standards, and when they don't achieve them, they feel like failure. That would be somebody manifesting as a perfectionist. Okay. And then you also have like these people who.
Hold on, sorry to say, you just said that. I couldn't help myself. My co-host, that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah.
You could help it.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be someone who, is, who's wearing the perfectionist face of imposter syndrome. And then you have someone who has difficulty asking for assistance just because they feel like if I'm asking for assistance, it means I'm not competent enough, right? That is somebody who's wearing a soloist face of imposter syndrome. And then there are some people who, they feel like things should come naturally to them, like things should be easygoing. And whenever they're hit with the first, difficulty in trying to accomplish or to execute something, they feel like a failure. They feel like they're not worthy or they're not competent enough to be able to do what it is they were trying to accomplish. Those you would call, like, they're wearing the natural genius face of imposter syndrome. And then there's those who are like superwoman or superman or just superhuman, where you wear this cap of trying to juggle so many things at the same time and expect to excel or be perfect in every single aspect. And when one hat falls off, you feel like the world is ending, and you blame yourself, and you have this guilt or shame that you were not able to accomplish what you set forth to do. Those will be the superhuman. And the fifth and last are experts, or the expert phase of imposter syndrome, where you always feel like what you do is not good enough. Okay, even when there's extensive knowledge and experience which you've harnessed or garnered over the years, you always still feel lacking. Like, hey, one day somebody's gonna feel like I'm a fraud, or somebody's gonna come tell me I'm a fraud, or you actually feel like you're a fraud and you're gonna be found out. So those are the different phases, and these were coined by the expert on imposter syndrome, who's Valerie Young, and this is way back in the 80s. She's one of the co-founders of the Imposter Syndrome Institute. So that's what we're referring to when we're saying the imposter phases. And yeah, they could manifest in your professional life, personal life, and everywhere in between.
See, that's why before we started recording, I said I don't like your book, because I did not know that I had imposter syndrome until I read through the faces. I was like, this cannot be it. Because we're used to the one face where it's like you feel like you don't belong. But yeah, that I was so mad. But but it was interesting to find out that there are all these different ways that imposter syndrome presents itself, and it's really not a one size fit all, like you mentioned. But even in your own story, you mentioned that having come from Cameroon and having to start developing imposter syndrome here with probably no prior experience with it. How would you say that your background has influenced your journey, and what was that turning point for you in having to say, okay, this is what this is, I'm done with this is the way forward?
Okay. So, like I had explained earlier, I did realize that after working for a year and just constantly feeling like I didn't belong, or wanting to prove myself all the time, and sometimes not feeling comfortable voicing my opinions, say in meetings or in areas where, they sought people's opinion, I realized, it's not serving me. It's not serving me. I do have the ability to thrive in this space. So I need to just give myself the grace. Like, I need to be gracious to myself. So, culturally, growing up a lot, in our African context, right? Or I would kind of hone down to my family background, right? As a kid, who did well in school, a lot of the times, you know, the success is not really celebrated openly, because it's like, oh, it's expected. You know what I mean? There's that expectation that you have to succeed in whatever you do. You have the exposure, so succeed. And even as a grown up, I remember when I had finished my doctorate degree and I reached out to my dad to let him know that I had finished and I'm going to be graduating, and I got an award and this and that. And he's like, yeah, I don't expect anything less from you. It's like, I can see that he's happy for me, right? But there is still that expectation of me to be successful. So just thinking back, you realize, oh wow, I think that may be, one of the fundamental reasons why I myself undermine my success, right? Because it's expected. What else? You better do that. But then it makes this, you kind of grow into this state of mind where you're like, yeah, if I win because it's expected, I'm just gonna downplay it. I don't acknowledge those, and there I go. In every setting where I am, I just feel like I'm not doing enough. Like, how do I keep proving myself every time that I belong wherever I am, and making big strides don't ever seem like I measure up, right? So I think based on these, and culturally coming from that kind of a family background where they do instill hard work in you, because yes, you're going to keep being a hard worker, you're going to achieve all these great things, but then you always doubt yourself if for some reason you don't get to where you expected. You start to doubt your ability to keep up with that, or you just have that burden to succeed, to where it's hard to change that mindset, right? And I don't think I addressed your question.
Yes, I was just up. Let me just follow up with this one.
Okay.
Okay. Now you spoke a little bit about like your family setting and background from Cameroon with that. With your 10 plus years experience in the field, do you think, or what's your observation, I should say, that with how imposter syndrome manifests? Does it vary across culture? And does it look different? Is there a certain pattern amongst Africans or amongst African Americans, amongst white, just across different cultures?
So I would start by saying that imposter syndrome in itself is like a universal experience, right? Across every culture, people experience imposter syndrome. Granted, about 70% of people at some point in their lives are going to experience self doubt or imposterism or imposter syndrome, right? But from a cultural context, it shapes how it actually manifests in a person, as well as how they tend to cope with these feelings, right, in the different cultures. So from an African perspective, you have a sense of, there's that burden of success, which I was describing, from my own experience, where both men and women who maybe have always been successful, there's that constant expectation of you to succeed, particularly. And also, if you go into global spaces, you feel sometimes like your skills or credentials are in question. So then there's that constant need to keep proving yourself. Another cultural aspect in like the African environment is that expectation of humility, to where sometimes if you were to voice out your accomplishments or achievements, it could be viewed as arrogance, especially for the women, I would say, like in the African context. So in the professional milieu, I remember even growing up, like even in school, there used to be some, like the sisters that led who were in charge of the school would tell you, girls are to be seen, not heard. you know this is something that is very common in the African society, where it's expected that as a girl you can be seen but not heard, literally. So for a little girl who keeps hearing this, or who grows up with this in this cultural setup, then they tend to feel like, hey, I need to be quiet, or I need to not I need to not be overbearing. If I just acknowledge that I have accomplished this much, I'm being arrogant. But then it kind of builds up over time, and you're just in that mindset of lowest, you have that lower sense of self, or where you're constantly doubting your ability, despite every evidence that all the effort you're putting is yielding fruit, it doesn't really translate in your mind. And however, from a cultural perspective, again, I feel like even the African culture, which promotes a sense of community and mentorship, or like where we believe in wisdom of the elderly, if we can use those, we can actually garner use those cultural aspects again to help us cope, by speaking with those we trust to kind of help us navigate these feelings, and also using it to kind of counteract or reframe our thoughts to improve on our self-confidence and be able to overcome these feelings of self-doubt. Now, as far as other cultures, in general, the underrepresented or minority groups tend to experience a lot more imposter syndrome than their peers.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you that. Well, like for me, who was born in Cameroon, raised right to a certain age, there are certain things in our educational system, for example, computers, right? They draw them on the board, and they are pointing here, here's this on the board, and I'm like, okay, I mean, what am I supposed to do with this drawing, right? A bird, that drawing it on the board, or you're drawing on your paper, but you're not seeing the physical thing, you're not operating, stuff like that. But you come to a country like the US, right? And it's a computer right in front of you, right? Whatever they're saying, it's right there, right? You operate on, this animal is like right in front of you. So it's like you have firsthand experience with it. So my question is, culturally, when we see that shift, like that shift, like when we experience that shift from, come from Cameroon to here, right? From not just like theory, but practical. Do you think that practical aspect of it, if we had that in Cameroon, for example, would that minimize imposter syndrome, or is it really like something different outside of that in general? If you get my question.
So if I'll try to rephrase your question to see if I understand it. So you're saying that if we had the same exposure as we get, say, in our new environment as we did in Cameroon, will that erase us from imposter syndrome, or will that stop us from experiencing imposter syndrome?
Correct. Yeah.
My quick answer to that would be, I don't believe so. Reason being, imposter syndrome is more of an experience you get based on the circumstances you face in every given time, right, of your life. You're not always you're not necessarily always feeling imposter feelings, right? Because there are certain things that you already master or you do without even thinking. Like if you're at home and there's you can wash your dishes, and you can be good at that, or you are home, you garden, and that's something you do for leisure, and that doesn't bother you. But then when you get exposed to situations where you're feeling overwhelmed, right, that's when you start to feel these feelings. So having been exposed to it, computers in the past or in Cameroon prior to coming here, I don't think that in itself will make you no longer to be an underrepresented population here. Because of course, you're also looking at how you relate with the other people within a certain setting or a context, right? And these feelings, they don't choose settings, or they don't choose your location. Because even in Cameroon, there are people over in Cameroon who are facing the same circumstances, but not everybody over there is feeling the imposter symptoms. Some are, others are not. So, Valerie Young would say that there is the mindset of an imposter and there's the mindset of a non-imposter. For you to leave from that mindset of an imposter to a non-imposter, you just have to start thinking of changing the way you think about yourself, right? A lot of the times people who are experiencing imposter syndrome, it's the wiring in your brain that keeps telling you you're not good enough. No matter whether your circumstances are the same with others, when you experience failure, you have this guilt and shame which you feel. Whereas somebody with a non-imposter syndrome or imposter feelings, they are always looking at it on a brighter side. When some failure occurs, they're thinking of, well, this is a learning experience and it's an opportunity to grow. So I believe that no matter where you are, you may be predisposed based on whatever external pressures you have, or some of them are actually internal pressures just based on your exposure or your circumstances growing up, which is for you to actually uncover this, you have to reflect over your past experiences to see where these pressures are rooted from that cause you to have these imposter feelings.
All right. 8 strategies you listed in your book. Acknowledge your achievements. Challenge negative thoughts. Challenge negative.
Don't give the people or let them go and buy the book.
Oh, damn. Okay, cool. All right. Good one. Good one. Good one.
Buy a book, buy the book, and you will know all 8.
Yes, so well.
Yes, we are gatekeeping.
Okay. Out of all the 8 strategies, right? If I wanted to get started today with one, just one out of the 8, what would you recommend?
The first thing I think would be an easy one to start with is to just acknowledge your wins, acknowledge your achievements. And you can do a very simple exercise, which I do, and I recommend that anybody who ever experiences self-doubt should do, is to start to do a done list. A lot of people have heard about doing, a to-do list. Like you can get up in the morning, write the things you want to do that day or you want to accomplish, but you don't, pair it up with a don'ts list. It's one thing to kind of check off what you did, right? But it's another thing to use your hand and write down what you accomplished. And that way, at the end of the day, you just give yourself a few minutes to admire that list which you came up with your own your own hands, I'm sorry, and reflect over it. And then you start to see that you start to replace challenges with gratitude. Like you find yourself being, you can give yourself the grace and just be grateful for what you've accomplished. And before you know it, you're rewiring your own thought process, to focus on growth, rather than looking for perfection. Right?
I actually love that that's the first one you picked, because of all the strategies, that was actually my favorite. And I started implementing it almost immediately because it came at a time where I'm having difficulties just having to sit in my wings, right? Because I'm looking at, okay, what's this next big thing? What's this thing? And I'm realizing now to have that done list, I actually do write it down. Like even if it's as small as I climbed the stairs and I was not out of breath, I write it down. I did my workout today. I woke up on time. I actually have started writing it down, and I mean, it's still a work in progress, but I can see how that kind of forces me to look at some of the things that I just check as an actual accomplishment. So I'm actually happy that you mentioned that, and that also part of and enjoying your wins is having to see how much you grow, right? And then the book, it emphasizes how we can balance that growth with compassion. How can someone who considers themselves high achieving or hyper productive, how can they maintain um, these standards of high performance and while being kind to themselves?
So a lot of times, like some high achievers will equate, say, self-worth with performance, right? But you can start to shift from that perfection, like trying to attain perfection, and rather think about it as you're trying to achieve excellence. The difference here is that you shouldn't be aiming for flawlessness because it's impossible, right? You want to focus on doing your best with what you have in front of you. And then if it fails, look at it as an opportunity to grow, right? So balancing self-compassion with ambition isn't necessarily about doing less, but it is about achieving more with a healthier mindset. It's all about your mindset and reframing your thoughts. Like every negative self-talk, try to replace it with something positive, right? Instead of telling yourself, I should have done better, you can try to say, I did my best. I did my best, and I'm going to grow from this point on. And then a powerful tool as well is like giving yourself periods of rest, because a lot of the times high achievers are workaholics, right? And if you keep at it, you're going to burn out. So you need those periods of rest so that you can actually improve your performance eventually. Because once you give yourself rest, you give yourself time to rejuvenate. You give yourself time to just come back pumped to give it your best again. So I think that's what I would say when you're trying to balance that compassion with growth, because you have to treat yourself like you would treat a dear friend of yours. Like if a friend comes at you saying, you know what, I'm not good at this, I don't think I can handle this. Most times than not, we're always there to cheer them on and say, hey, you got this, We should be doing the same to ourselves. Because a lot of times I tell you, when you're high achieving and you set high goals for yourself, you're always, or a lot of the times can be your harshest critic. So if you can consciously take an active stance in reframing negative self-talk with positive self-talk and just allowing yourself to rest so that you have enough to put back out there, that self-compassion will definitely mirror growth and will work hand in hand and propel you forward rather than hold you back.
Yeah, so it's funny you said that because I was just looking at, the book, and I was going to say, you wrote something that, really stands out. Well, two things for me that really stand out was be kind to yourself and treat yourself with the same empathy and understanding you would offer to a friend facing similar struggles. And then, later, which was the last of, the strategies, you mentioned that um, once you sit at the table with some of the most influential names in the world, you get to realize that people and all that, right? And that's really true because some people, when you talk to them, go, oh, I have a presentation tomorrow, but I'm really scared, man, because it's like I got to present to XYZ people. I'm like, dude, you walk by that person all the time in the hallway. You say hi to them, they say hi to you. Oh, how's your
right?
Why is it any different when you step in that room? You know what I mean? Because the way I look at some things is, right, if I don't know, it's one of two things you can do, right? Either you can teach me or you point me to somebody who's going to teach me. But one thing, you're not going to stand there and be scolding at me or laughing at me because at the end of the day, right, I don't know that, you know, no matter what you say in that moment, it's not going to change the fact that I don't know. So you can either point me in the right direction or, you know, teach me what I need to know, right? So, in this world, right, in our world right now that's really evolving professionally, well, our current president just changing things around, you know, like his pen works more than him, you know, like what new challenges around, you know, imposter syndrome have you seen emerge, right, as you talk to some of your clientels and, you know, people in general, like, and how do you, you know, propose we address them in today's society?
All right. So before I address that question, I just wanted to go back to the last statement you said, reading out of the book. Those were former President Obama's words, which I placed there. He's the one who's telling, you know, he's encouraging people not to doubt themselves or to feel less, because when you do sit on a table with all these huge world figures, you realize that people really ain't all that. So those were his exact words, which I paraphrased, and I just wanted to make that clear. And now to address your question, as you know, imposter syndrome is evolving as our professional milieu is evolving. I think there are some aspects of our professional sector right now that are changing, and we can look at things like a rise in remote work as well as digital comparison. And when I talk about digital comparison, I mean, like, you have platforms like LinkedIn where people come and share their stories, like share big success stories. And some people will, for someone who is living with imposter syndrome or experiencing these symptoms, they will look at those success stories and feel like, oh my God, I am behind. Oh, wow. You know, and they feel intimidated, or they feel like, wow, I can't measure up. Also, in the context of the remote work, you know, they don't have that in-person face-to-face interaction with colleagues, or where they could get that instant validation of what they're actually doing and accomplishing. So for some of these people suffering with imposter syndrome may find this very difficult, because they kind of rely on this external validation to keep reminding themselves that they're worthy, right? So for someone who's feeling that, I just encourage you to actively seek feedback, right? And to continue to celebrate your small wins using, you know, the tool we just talked about, writing your done list. Get that done and just be happy with yourself, celebrate yourself. And for when it comes to the digital comparison in places like LinkedIn and seeing others flourishing, just remember that that's just one snapshot of their life, you know. So don't base off of that to talk down on yourself, or let your mind talk down on you. Reframe it and keep pushing yourself with positive thoughts and positive, because the more you think that way, the more you train yourself to feel that way and to execute, or to come out that way, to present yourself with confidence. Another thing that is evolving in our spaces too, I know you in IT, you know, you guys can tell us more about AI. With the institution of like AI and a lot of technology in professional spaces, a lot of times for someone who might be suffering from imposter syndrome or experiencing it, they might always feel behind, like, oh, wow, I can't measure up, you know, I can't meet up with my skills, right? So for someone who's experiencing that, I'm just going to say, you know what? Remind yourself that you can learn, right? Even if technology might be challenging for you, you just need to reframe your thoughts and keep reminding yourself that you can learn. And you don't need perfection to be who you are. You don't need perfection to be worth it. You just need to keep making little strides every day and getting better at what it is that you do. And also, I think another aspect that I could mention would be the focus on inclusion and diversity in workspaces. So if we have a diversity in our workspaces, you can only imagine that there will be underrepresented populations in work settings. And for a lot of people, they really feel intimidated as such. And also in interpersonal relationships at work, those who are underrepresented have the tendency to feel or have higher imposter feelings. So in these cases, I would just encourage someone experiencing this to seek support, get a mentor who may be like you, has achieved, and can share their stories with you to encourage you to know that despite your self doubt, you can flourish. You can do great things.
Very powerful. Is it my job to spot imposter syndrome in my colleagues? Or how can I spot it? And if I do, how can I address it? Or is it my place to address it?
So if in your workplace, if you have a leadership role, I encourage that these discussions be normalized, right? Try to have the discussion about imposter syndrome be a normal conversation at work. This way, people who maybe experience it in your workplace can feel comfortable to share their experiences and feel supported and feel like the environment is conducive for them to express this and get the support they need to flourish, right? Now, when you say, how can you identify if somebody maybe experiencing imposter syndrome at work? Some of the things would be a lot of times they don't feel comfortable sharing their ideas, right? And you can see that this person is very talented, but in meetings, they just shy away from saying anything. Or even when offered promotions, they may decline because they just don't feel good enough. They don't feel competent enough to be able to do that. In those cases, I would say it may not necessarily be your place to point it out to them that, hey, you have imposter syndrome, because it may be uncomfortable for them. It's just to normalize it in the work setting so that it encourages them to feel free to talk about it. Because if it's a normal conversation to talk about, then they could actually realize that this is what I'm experiencing. And I think if I were to talk about it in my workspace, it will be well received and I'll get the support I need. So I think that would be a way to address it in a workplace rather than come at somebody saying, hey, I think you have imposter syndrome because you don't share much, you don't engage in leadership. I think being tactical about addressing this in a workplace is very warranted so that people feel supported in their workspace and can actually enjoy being there.
That we just spoke about how we can be supportive in the workplace, right? And
Right.
referencing something you mentioned at the beginning about coming from a Cameroonian background where it is sort of expected that you be your highest producing self, right? And we don't tend to celebrate these wins. How can we, in the setting of the family, create supportive environments as well to help with our kids, our family members from dealing or helping them to deal with imposters?
I think just like in the workspace, normalizing conversations where we can actually feel free to talk about the things that bother us, right? Because for someone who is experiencing imposter syndrome, they already have the fear that, oh, I'm not good enough, right? And they also have that fear, or they sometimes feel like what they do or what they achieve is out of luck, not necessarily the work they're putting in. And another thing is, whenever they experience failure, or are faced with failure, there's that intense shame where they feel like, oh, this is all because I'm not even good, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not competent. So in at home, it's just fostering an open dialogue with family members, right? And for those who are educated and understand what imposter syndrome is, letting them know that to experience it, honestly, you're not alone. Because research has shown that 70% of people experience imposter syndrome at some point in their lives. And even the most accomplished people have also dealt with this at some point, right? Even like, influential people like former first lady Michelle Obama. She talks about it herself, and she shares and encourages young ladies to to not fear discussing these issues, and to realize that societal pressures do not define them, right? So even in our homes, we should be free and open to start these conversations with the older generation, for them to be open as well to acknowledge that, people do struggle. And as a family unit, you're the greatest support system somebody could ever have. So if they can feel comfortable to talk about these things with you and just receive that some form of encouragement, and know that they're not alone, and if they ever needed support, you are here for them, I think that would be a good start. And then if all else fails, have them seek professional help.
Okay. I want us to bring this whole thing full circle, right? Because it seems like we're almost becoming the messenger of doom. Like, oh, you don't feel good. Oh, this is what you do. Let's see if there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Is there a point where you can say that I have overcome imposter syndrome? Or is it about just practicing like some of the 8 strategies that you listed in the book?
So that's a good question. So the thing about imposter syndrome is it's not a something that just disappears, right? But if you can just tweak your mindset, because it starts by your thoughts. If you can actively work on rewiring or reframing your self-talk or your thoughts towards self-doubt, then you can address it every time it presents itself, basically. Because sometimes it could be when major things happen in your life, when major accomplishments happen, or you have, let's say you have to start this new exciting job, you have to move into a new environment, you have to maybe start a new profession or change professions. That self-doubt could still creep in, but it's all about developing these skills, like having your toolbox, so that before it strikes, or as soon as it strikes, you have curbed it away. Like you have those strategies to implement to close it off. I think that's what you should focus more on, because at every given time it could present itself. But the more you keep practicing these strategies, the more you're able to overcome it as soon as it presents itself.
How can embracing cultural roots and tradition help build authentic confidence?
So our culture is kind of gives us a sense of identity, right? Who we are is based off of where we came from. And when we embrace this culture, we just embrace our uniqueness and realize that we're part of this bigger picture, but we in ourselves are unique, and that is our strength. So if we can embrace our culture, then we don't seek external validation from others, right? We are who we are, and we are enough the way we are. So we don't need external validation to know that we are worthy of what we get or what we accomplish. So if we can embrace our culture, we'll have that sense of identity and be part of a community and know that we always have support no matter where we go, and don't need any external validation.
That's awesome. One last question I have. Do you have a personal mantra or what do they call these things? Affirmation or routine that you do or say when, imposter syndrome kicks in or self-doubt?
Yes. I do have a few things that I would say if I start feeling like self-doubt is creeping. And I know I mentioned it in the book, but it's silly. But because it's silly, it grounds me and makes me realize it's not that serious. You can do this. So I would tell the self-doubt, I kind of act like I'm talking to somebody, like, bye, Felicia, get out of here, right? I would say something silly like that and then ground myself. But then on a serious note, if we're going to talk about like affirmation statements, it's just to say, I am enough as I am, and my uniqueness is my strength. I don't need to be perfect. I don't need to be perfect. I just need to grow. So that's what I would say. I am enough as I am. My uniqueness is my strength. I don't need to be perfect. I just need to keep growing.
Like one of those meditation, like people who meditate and the sound is like, yeah, we need one of those, with that last thing you just said, you just play in the background and you just, take it in, breathe in.
You might have to cut that segment and send it to me so I can play it.
Well, that was Terez's last question. My own last question is this. Is it imposter syndrome in marriages?
It comes in every way, shape, or form. So you could experience imposter syndrome in your marriage, in your relationship with your kids, in your relationship with your siblings. Yes, you can experience imposter syndrome even in those arenas. In marriage, sometimes is you could actually feel like, have you ever seen where a couple comes and let's say somebody, like external factors say, how did you end up with this person? Like when I look at the both of you, it doesn't match. So some people actually internalize those things and feel like they're not good enough for their partner and take that all the way into marriage. So yes, it is possible to experience imposter syndrome, and you could apply these same strategies across professional life, your marriage, your relationship with your siblings, your family members, your kids, and it will produce the same results. Because just by acknowledging your achievements in your marriage, like with every month that goes by, you write down the things you've been able to accomplish with your spouse and see that you guys are a team, right? You could give it a week to do your don'ts list as far as your marriage goes, right? What did we accomplish this week? What was my contribution in this for us to have achieved this? And then you start to validate yourself, validate your contributions to your marriage, and realize that, yes, you are good enough for your spouse. And there's a reason why the both of you ended up together. So, yes, you can experience imposter syndrome in your marriage, and there's hope because there is things you can do to improve those feelings and to eventually replace the self-doubt in your marriage with confidence and a work of solidarity or togetherness with your spouse.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Listen, how would you know if you don't go pick up the book and read? Only 52 pages, 53, 54, 5.
It's total of 57 pages, but of course there's a reference page. There's about the author, but yes, there's substance in there. And if you would like a copy, it's on Amazon. Everywhere where they distribute, you can get on Amazon. So be it Canada, the US, Japan, Germany, wherever you are, as long as Amazon ships to that country, you can get a copy on Amazon. You could also grab a digital copy on seller.co for my folks in Africa who may not be able to get Amazon shipped directly to them. You can get a copy on seller.co. If you live in the US and would like an author signed copy, you can go on my website, author Michele Yonga, DNP, at bigcartel.com and order one. You can also find me on Instagram at Dr. Michele Yonga, and my link tree is on there. The link is on my bio, and it will take you straight to all the links where you can get a copy of this book based on where you are and what you're looking for. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
I know that's right. You better pluck
I
that.
know. See, I'll say one thing about this book, though. I like that it was just straightforward. You took out all the, not that it's not important, right? But the research and the scientific terms, and it's just straight to the point. This is what it is. This is how, these are the root courses. These are 8 practical. And I was not expecting the practical strategies to be that simple. I was like, okay, she'll probably come and give me some mindfulness or, so they're very, very practical and almost looks silly. Like, I'm trying to overcome this. Why should I be doing this? But like I said, one of them is already working for me. So I do really appreciate it. It's small, but mighty.
Thank you.
It's not heavy. It's not one of those heavy books I think that you read and then you have to go and solve further math to understand it.
Nope.
Oh,
Straight to the point.
Yeah, straight to the point. Yep. So yeah, T, any last comments before close out?
Get the book, people. Get the book.
Yeah. Doc, is there anything that we haven't asked you that you would like for the folks to know?
So I would just want to say that if you are experiencing imposter syndrome, it's not necessarily a clinical diagnosis. It's a phenomenon where you just have this crippling self-doubt, but realize you're not alone. And there is things you can do to improve on these feelings. And as long as you can reframe your mindset into a growth mindset, you are going to be fine. I think those are the words I would like to path with. And I wish everyone all the best in whatever struggles you may be facing. Know that there is support, there is help out there. Just reach out.
Yeah, so Dr. Yonga, thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and vulnerability with us today. Your work clearly goes beyond helping, people overcome imposter syndrome. It's about empowering them to live authentically and confidently. To our listeners, remember, you're not alone, like Doc said, in feeling like an imposter. As Doc shown today, this powerful book, right, will help you recognize these feelings, address them directly, and take steady steps towards embracing your worth. But before we wrap up, she already mentioned where you can find her. It will be down here in the show notes, guys. So you don't have to type in, everything. Just go down there, click, and boom, it will take you there. Again, This is Palm Wine Central Podcast. Our host today is Dr. Michele Yonga. She's the author of Triumphing Over Imposter Syndrome, 8 Practical Strategies, what T is holding, to uncover and shine through imposter faces in your professional life. Guys, pick it up, read it, and don't be scared when people ask you questions. If you don't know, ask. Closed mouths don't get fed. That's what I'm closing with. I'm Uncle AK. T is my co-host. Our guest today is Dr. Michele. Please come back, anytime. Reach out, come back, share. If you're writing again, come and share. But most importantly, I'm meant to ask you this: is there an audiobook? Please, release audiobook for some of us who listen.
That's right. That's for the future. We'll look into that.
It have taken us like 30 minutes to listen, but we had to do 1 hour, 30 minutes reading. But we thank the Most High. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Thank you.